So there's a brand new trailer for the next 2 chapters of Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and these chapters have got people talking about how this could potentially be related to Rebirth, or maybe even bridge the gap to Final Fantasy VII Part 3, and they involve Sephiroth. And we've also got a really cool fan theory going around about Jenova and Aerith's White Materia that I think is really cool. So starting off first with that new trailer for Ever Crisis, it's about a minute long, and I believe these next 2 chapters, which are titled Chapter 7, The Boy and the Hero, and Chapter 8, The Hero Sephiroth, are supposed to come out on May 15th. And in this trailer, it's setting up basically the island that the young boy Rosen is on, and everything is going to crap. The island is shaking, you see Livestream kind of popping up everywhere, and they're trying to convince this kid to go with them, but it's his job to keep an eye on that island, to protect it. It's basically his job to manage the smoke stack in that area, and that's his way of sending signals and communicating with the outside land. But for whatever reason, he does not want to leave. And it does show a few spots in this trailer where Sephiroth is like, okay, well, maybe he will talk to me. And we've seen teases of this before with Rosen and Sephiroth talking in front of that fire, but they haven't really expanded upon it. And it looks like with these 2 chapters, they're going to do that. Now, how is this all going to somehow relate to Rebirth and maybe even Part 3? Well, the final shot in this trailer is very interesting because it shows what seems to be an older Sephiroth, or like a modern day Sephiroth, in what looks to be an outside setting. It's at night, it's dark, he's just kind of looking up at the sky, and he's quiet. He doesn't say anything. And at first you would think, yeah, he's just outside at night, but there are some people pointing out that it kind of looks like he might be on the edge of creation. It's almost kind of like a cross with how it looked in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with a lot of the purple with the stars in the sky, but also how it looked in 7 Remake, where it was just really, really dark, and they were in this like space type of environment. And that might seem like a stretch, but the song that's playing in this trailer is the song we hear at the end of 7 Remake, when Cloud and Sephiroth are at the edge of creation. So now people are wondering, is this somehow going to build into Rebirth, or is this going to act as a bridge perhaps to Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 and really delve more into the story of Sephiroth? And I'm starting to wonder myself, is this going to be how they introduce to us the edge of creation? How does Sephiroth come across it? What is its purpose? How is he going to use it? Is the Sephiroth we even see at the end of 7 Remake a different Sephiroth? Because he doesn't seem, like super evil and devious like he normally does. He actually offers his hand to Cloud and says, "Let us defy destiny together." And that scene to this day still stands out to me. And I'm like, what is Sephiroth doing? Because he's just not even toying with Cloud. He's like genuinely offering like, hey, we should work together. And granted, there might be some more stuff going on that Sephiroth cannot speak on, but I just think that that last shot in the Ever Crisis trailer is very interesting. And if it does somehow wrap around and connect more with Rebirth and kind of bridge the gap to Part 3, that would be really interesting. Now, I don't know if they should do that. Putting supplemental information into a mobile game is not the greatest idea, unless it's one of those things that they're going to recap for us in Part 3 and expand upon even more. Then I think it could work. But this wouldn't be the first time that elements of Ever Crisis have made their way into the 7 Remake project. Glenn, for example, he was created initially, we learned this from the Ultimania, he was initially created for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but they decided to put him in Ever Crisis and kind of expand him a little more. There's also the Proto-Relic side missions in Cosmo Canyon in Rebirth, where you learn the fate of Wedge. And in some of those Proto-Relic missions, we actually get a name drop from Matt and Lucia, who are Glenn's partners that we see in Ever Crisis. So those 2 characters in particular are alive and well. They're involved with Avalanche to a degree, and based on what we've seen in Rebirth, Glenn is no longer alive. He is dead. And the Glenn that we are seeing in Rebirth is not necessarily Glenn. He's Glenn with air quotes to be precise, but it's like a version of Sephiroth and Jenova, kind of like the robed men that can take forms of Sephiroth and become like these clones, these illusionary clones. They're kind of doing the same thing with Glenn to kind of mess with Rufus and start this whole war with Wu-Tai and Shinra and Midgar and just create all of this negative bad energy that Sephiroth inevitably will feed on. But it's going to be really cool to see how they expand upon this story, what exactly is going to be in it, what happens between Sephiroth and Rosen. Is this a situation where Rosen just does not want to leave this island, and Sephiroth can't do anything to save him, and that's part of his backstory. So seeing more about that and learning more about Sephiroth, and whether or not they tie that into Remake Part 3, I don't know, but I think it could be super cool if they do. And of course, let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this trailer for Ever Crisis? Do you think Sephiroth is indeed on the edge of creation in that last shot, or is he just standing outside? Either way, it's super interesting. Now, to get to this really awesome fan theory that I came across the other day on Reddit, this was in the Final Fantasy VII Remake subreddit posted by Zealous Ideal, where they talk about how it looks like there's a piece of materia embedded in the chest of Jenova Lifeklinger at the very end of the game. And when I read this post, I went back and watched the footage of that fight, and 100% it does look like it has not just any old materia embedded in its chest, but Aerith's holy, its white materia, that seems to be glowing in the chest of Jenova, which is super cool, and that's not something I picked up on my first playthrough. There's just so much going on with the story and the battle and the music that you don't notice some of the smaller, finer details that the developers are throwing in there. But this user goes on to talk about how this might be Sephiroth and Jenova kind of bastardizing the white materia and using it for themselves to fight against the party, which is why it's embedded in the chest of Jenova. And we even see Jenova like it's this space creature from The Thing, where it's trying to take the form of a human again and mimic humanity. It's even got some human eyes, and it's just really creepy and unsettling. And what's really interesting is that we talked about this in our most recent video, talking about the music of Rebirth, and how in that specific scenario there's Aerith's theme and it's playing because she's just passed, and you slowly hear that Jenova theme kind of creep in and eventually overtake and swallow Aerith's theme. And that music actually matches what we're seeing in this battle, as the user will go on to say that it seems like at the beginning Jenova's trying to soak up this holy power, and eventually once it finds a way to try and harness it, that's when Aerith's theme completely disappears and the Jenova theme kicks in. And we even see Jenova get those human eyes, which were super unsettling and creepy. It's one thing to have like an alien skull face, but to have those really just unnatural, uncanny looking eyes attached to this blob creature, it's disturbing. Another user by the name of Fogfree goes on to point out that after that white materia starts to glow and Jenova seemingly has control of that power, it starts to use what I'm going to refer to as bastardized versions of Aerith's abilities. One of the first ones being prismatic compression, which is very similar to Aerith's ward shift ability, where she can teleport around the field. Although Jenova has been able to do that, we do see that in 7 Remake she can swap places in that Jenova quickening fight, so that one's not really too new or out there, but it is still very similar. And then the other one that is pointed out by Fogfree is Dreams of Sorcery, which has these laser-like attacks that resemble Aerith's laser attacks from her Radiant Ward ability, which was an incredible ability, so overpowered, and just launching all of those lasers at Sephiroth in the final battle is incredibly satisfying. But they also noticed that once we enter that 4th phase of the fight and we separate, seemingly, Jenova from that materia, its attacks go back to being very basic and we don't see that stuff show up again. So that kind of leads credence to the theory that, yeah, this is the white materia that Jenova is trying to harness, but we eventually sever the connection. But Zealous Ideal goes on to say that throughout the battle, it kind of seems like Jenova is in fact struggling with this power, and it's struggling to find a way to harness it, and eventually as the party, we damage Jenova enough to the point where we're finally able to separate the connection between Jenova and the materia, and it just releases this burst of energy, and we see that green wave of energy come out, but also the white whispers, which I don't remember if Rebirth confirmed what the white whispers were. Are they the whispers that belong to the planets? Are they Aerith's whispers? That was kind of my first idea, is that the black ones belong to Sephiroth, the white ones belong to Aerith. So in that moment when that happens, that wave of energy is released, our party is also healed fully with our HP and MP, so it's kind of like Aerith's materia, the holy, is in fact working, and Sephiroth and Jenova just couldn't, harness it properly because we were fighting against them. Zealous Ideal also points out this really even finer detail in regards to the name Murasaki, which was a character in one of the the chapters, the character we were looking for, and how in Japanese, Murasaki apparently means purple, which is the color between blue and red. And in the Jenova battle, we see highlights of blue and red as this creature is kind of transitioning. So naturally the color in between that would be purple, which Zealous Ideal goes on to talk about being kind of like maybe an example of Sephiroth kind of controlling Cloud and letting that degradation kind of take over, and how Murasaki, when we meet Vincent, he's like, "You're not Murasaki," which might play into what we're seeing at the end of Rebirth with that really weird Aerith that kept popping up in the Forgotten Capital, the one that we all presume, well, not we, I know there's people out there that don't, believe in this theory, but there's that theory that I definitely believe in of how one of the Aeriths we're seeing at the end of the game is not Aerith, it's the Jenova clone, and that all of this stuff kind of wraps into that, which is really interesting. And I thought that this fan theory was super, super interesting. All of the details that they pointed out and gathered, I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to check this out for yourself. And again, I just think that this stuff is absolutely fascinating. Like I mentioned in a previous video, the developers for the 7 Remake project, they're not just doing things just to do things. Seemingly everything they do has a purpose. From gameplay mechanics to musical cues to the way certain scenes are lit and shot and the colors they use, everything has a purpose. And there's so much stuff going on in Rebirth that I'm sure years from now, maybe to the lead up of part 3, people are just then going to discover, hey, this thing happened in Rebirth. We never noticed it. This character did this. This color was used here. It's just incredibly fascinating. And I can't wait to see what people dig up. And to close this out, they also talk about how maybe this was something they tried to depict in the original game. Because there is a sequence in the original game when Sephiroth, I believe in this section in the OG, he tries to summon Jenova, and he's using what looks to be materia, like this kind of teal materia. And based on some of the technical limitations, Zealous Ideal thinks that maybe this was originally what they were depicting in the OG game, is that Sephiroth was in fact using Aerith's white materia after, she had been murdered and it fell to the bottom of the water, and he was using that to summon Jenova and power it. So maybe this is their way of bringing that idea back and reinterpreting it, and because technology has grown so much, they can actually visually show that off in the game and communicate that to the players, unlike how it was in the OG where you couldn't really do too much because of those technical limitations, and maybe that kind of got lost in translation somewhere along the way. But either way, incredible fan theory. Again, links for all of this stuff will be in the description below. But with that being said, that is the video. I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think is going to happen in these next 2 Ever Crisis chapters? Is Sephiroth standing at the edge of creation at the end of that trailer? And what do you think of this really awesome Jenova White Materia fan theory? And before you go, make sure to check out my most recent video where we talk about Resident Evil 9 and some of the rumors surrounding the next installment and what we can expect to see from that game. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.